To get the dog training side of this under is I spent almost 10 years as a police K9 handler, narcotics and a patrol dog. And I was one of those guys that dove into it every weekend. I was somewhere training. I was going to every seminar I could think of. And I also competed a lot in Schutzen with my dogs, for my police dogs, to show control and records to a court of obedience, protection, and tracking. And I really dove into that sport to the point where I was breeding shepherds and Malinois and selling them to police departments and military, private citizens that did things. So I had my own kennel up in Ohio that housed about 15 dogs. And I basically, learned all my training from the police world. So coming into this venue and military dogs, coming into this venue was a little tougher because it's a whole different set of training. It's a whole different breed of dog. We're always trying to contain drive with a police dog or a military dog, where some of the dogs here we had to build drive to want to go out and work. So after I retired in 2004, I ended up in Iraq for a year working a tracking and explosives dog in the city of Mosul, and got injured there from an IED blast and several other reasons, and came back and was suffering PTSD pretty bad. So the family got together, started trying to create ways that they could get me out of my own shell and start using the talents that I had. And we ended up still going back to Iraq in 2010 again for another year because I lost my job here in the States and I couldn't find one. And so my buddy called, but during that time in 2010 is where we created K9s for Warriors, 09 going into 2010, the idea. And my mom, Sherry Duvall, started it, as she will say, to save me, which it did, but it also has now turned in from our goal of having a location to bring 1 or 2 warriors in a month to training up to 12 warriors a month now, male and female. We run the classes independently though due to the trauma that everybody receives. And from those 2 dogs to where we were in a very small 3-bedroom house, our kennel was a mod space building with crates, and my mom, myself, and my brother-in-law at the time were running the kennel and the operation and the training. So those 2 didn't know how to train dogs, so I was training dogs and the kennel portion at the same time. We were selecting them from our local shelters. In the beginning, doing 1 or 2 dogs a month, it was, we had a good stock of dogs that we could find, so sort of made my job easy in the beginning. I could go through and look at 10 dogs, and I know I only needed 2, to where we're going through now that we work with multiple shelters across state lines and everything, because we have to, for those 12 dogs to be ready, I need to have about 24 dogs to choose from that are in training at different places. And also, the good and bad problem of it was we sort of ran some of the shelters out of the dogs that were not our size and height requirement, things like that. So good thing for the shelter as well. Bad thing for me when I go in, there's only 2 or 3 dogs to choose from, and I need to bring back more than 2 dogs at a time. So that worked out really well. We created a lot of relationships with the local shelters and now shelters abroad too, to help us out to supplies with these dogs. But starting from that small goal of 3 employees, 2 warriors a month, on not even a 1-acre property where we shared the bathrooms with the warriors and everything. We actually made a closet into a bedroom. Some of the guys loved that because there was no window. And they're like, oh, I like that. We like this because the rooms we live in, down. Yes. The rooms we lived in Iraq, you tape your windows shut so the glass doesn't go, and then sometimes you may be working all night and you need to sleep during the day, and there was no daylight in those rooms. And so some of the guys felt more comfortable living in this little closet that we put up. Don't tell the county when it's going to go out here because we don't own the property anymore, so we're good. And it grew from there to 4 warriors at that place. And then we saw through the grassroots effort that we were doing that this was a very viable and sustainable thing, and it's a good thing for us. We're watching our veterans that were coming in that were not doing the right things and we're not getting out in public, to where they were coming back at first just back to us to volunteer because we didn't have a lot of volunteers, and these guys wanted to give back. So they started coming back and doing things, and then that word of mouth got out. We have 2 naval stations around here, so it was easy for them to find guys that were getting out that needed this. And so I'd say in the beginning, Mayport and NAS Jax, we had 5 graduates total in that first year that were stationed at either one of those, and they could drive here. We didn't have any vehicles. I used to drive my personal car, and they had their personal cars, and we'd drive all over town to train. And today we've got it to where we have a fleet of vehicles, and we have a 1-to-4 student ratio during that 12, and they go out in a van, with the 1-to-4, one teacher to the 4 students, and they can go to Petco with one group, the other group can go to Costco, the other group can go to the zoo. We have benchmarks that they need to make while they're here, but starting out from just that little small place and running up to Target and Publix and Chili's, because we could take them out to lunch, I think, like every other day. We're watching our money so much. Mom didn't take a salary until maybe 2 years ago, so over 4 years with no salary. And the first year we almost went under because she couldn't pay our salaries. I didn't see a paycheck for like 3 months, but it was the passion of the mission. It didn't really matter at that point in time. We just did what we had to do to get it done. Unconventional at best. You guys, I'm sure, have seen all the other big guide dog foundations that have been established since the 40s, hearing and seeing. And they had the budget, and they had the facilities, and they had the dogs, but it wasn't geared towards PTSD for veterans and traumatic brain injury. They're more geared toward, and back then, not even autism yet. Now they're doing autism, but it was seeing, hearing, and mobility. Those were the three big things, and they're still the big portion of the guide dogs and service dogs. I know he's a bad guy. He's a bad guy. So we were kind of new and different, having the live-in facility, using shelter dogs and doing it for PTSD, which wasn't recognized by the ADA. At the time, the VA recognized it. But in 2012, finally, I think it was, the ADA listed PTSD as a disability for a service animal to mitigate. So not fighting an uphill battle, but just keeping the battle going so that they did it. Because we have thousands upon thousands of service members that suffer PTSD, traumatic brain injury, and a lot of them won't even admit it. As soon as you do, they are out of the Army, or they're out of the Marine Corps, or they're out of the Navy. Then so most of the guys suck it up and don't say a word. And when they get out finally, then they realize how bad it is, and they come to us. So, over the years we've learned. I don't really have a training philosophy, but I also go with what the dog can do for the warrior and what the warrior can do for the dog. So we always set our training based on obedience. If the dog is obedient and knows how to, we've taught them how to understand yes, no, all those good things, and we do it with positive reinforcement with food. You guys saw me using cheese for him. He's a food hound. The basics stay there: sit down, stay, come when called. I'm a believer, and if you have the small things fixed, the big things aren't a problem. If they understand yes and no and what their good commands are and their negative consequences are, then we can get into the task stuff for block, brace, cover. And these things were all added on as we developed and as we grew with our dogs and our program.